was still standing in my father's living room when my Aunt Miranda looked me straight in the face and said, "There is no will, Elena. He never wrote one. The estate goes to the family automatically." The room was silent except for the ticking grandfather clock my father had cherished for decades. I felt something in my chest crack open like ice breaking under pressure. I had just buried him 12 hours earlier. His house still smelled like his cologne, woody and warm, the scent clinging to the furniture and curtains. His books were still arranged by color on the tall wooden shelves. His reading glasses sat on the coffee table where he'd left them last week. And yet here they were, circling like vultures over fresh prey. My Aunt Miranda, my cousin Tyler, and my step-uncle Ross, passing papers between them, dividing everything up like they were splitting a restaurant bill. Miranda folded her arms tighter across her chest, her expression hard and cold. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she added, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You weren't exactly close to him anyway." It hit like a physical slap across my face. I opened my mouth to speak, to defend myself, but Tyler shoved a thick folder into his backpack and said dismissively, "Let's not waste time arguing about feelings. We have to start clearing out the house tomorrow morning." The house. My father's house. The home he built with his own hands, board by board, nail by nail. And now they were taking it like it meant nothing at all. But deep inside, beneath the shock and the overwhelming grief, I felt something else rising slowly. They were lying. I didn't know how yet, but I could feel it like electricity in my bones. By morning, the house already smelled wrong. Chemical cleaners, sharp lemon polish, the cold sterile scent of cardboard boxes being unpacked everywhere. Tyler was emptying drawers in the study, tossing papers carelessly into black garbage bags, humming like he was enjoying himself immensely. I walked into my father's office quietly, trying not to draw any attention to myself. The desk drawer where he always kept his important documents was hanging open. It was empty. Not sorted and organized, empty. Stripped completely empty, like someone had swept everything out in one motion. Every paper, folder, and envelope removed without a single trace left behind. My father never removed anything from that drawer. He was meticulous, careful, someone who kept records of absolutely everything for years. Someone had been here before me. Someone had taken everything that mattered. Then I noticed something else that made my heart race. The safe under his desk, a small black box bolted firmly to the floor, had its dial slightly turned, like someone had recently opened it and forgotten to reset it properly to 0. My heartbeat doubled instantly. I knelt down and opened it with a combination I'd known since childhood, the numbers worn into my memory. Inside, the safe held a few old coins, a silver pocket watch, and a single indentation in the felt lining where a folder should have been. The outline was clear, rectangular, about the size of a legal document folder. They didn't just hide something from me. They already stole it. And the worst part, I could name every single thief in this house without hesitation. At the cemetery during the burial service, while the family gave their carefully rehearsed speeches about how much they loved him, a stranger approached me quietly near the edge of the gathering. He wore a dark suit, had a neat gray beard, and spoke with a soft, careful voice that immediately commanded respect. "Miss Elena, my name is Alan Graves. I was your father's attorney for the past 15 years. I froze completely, my entire body going rigid. Attorney. He shouldn't exist, because according to my aunt, my father had no will and no lawyer to handle his affairs. Alan slipped a business card into my palm discreetly. His movements smooth and practiced. "There are documents you need to see. Very important ones that concern your future." Before I could ask him anything or even respond, Miranda appeared behind me like a shadow, her smile sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. "We'll take it from here," she told him, her voice falsely sweet but with an edge underneath. Except Alan didn't step back or look intimidated at all. He said, loudly enough for several nearby people to hear clearly, "I cannot take it from here with anyone except his legal heir. And that person is Elena Rhodes." Miranda's smile twitched violently at the corners. Her jaw tightened visibly. I realized two things at once in that charged moment. My aunt was absolutely terrified of this man and what he knew. And the lawyer knew something she desperately didn't want me to discover. Alan nodded to me once with quiet confidence, then walked away through the gravestones toward the parking area. I clutched his card in my hand tightly, feeling the embossed letters under my thumb. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, I arrived at the attorney's office downtown, a tall building with glass windows reflecting the heavy gray sky above. But I wasn't the only one there waiting. Miranda and Tyler were already in the lobby, arguing loudly with the receptionist behind the polished desk. "We're family," Miranda barked, leaning aggressively over the counter. "We have every legal right to be in that meeting. Your appointment request was declined by Mr. Graves himself," the receptionist replied calmly, not backing down an inch. "He is meeting with Elena Rhodes only today." When I stepped forward through the glass doors, Miranda's eyes turned to pure poison and hatred. She grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "You are walking into a disaster you don't understand," she hissed directly in my ear. I pulled my arm free forcefully and leaned in close to her face. "Maybe I am. But at least I'm not the one shaking like a leaf." And she was. Her hand on her expensive designer purse trembled visibly, her fingers twitching. Inside the office, Alan closed the heavy wooden door firmly and gestured for me to sit in a comfortable leather chair. The room smelled like old books and polished leather furniture. "Elena, your father wasn't confused or careless in his final years. He was deliberate, purposeful, and he left something meant only for you." My throat tightened with emotion. He placed a brown envelope on the desk between us carefully. My name was written on it in my father's careful, precise handwriting. But before I could reach for it or open it, Alan stopped me with a raised hand. "You need to know something first before we proceed. The will is not simple. And it's definitely not what they think it is." Something cold rippled down my spine like ice water. What did my father do? What had he planned? Alan pulled out the document slowly, handling it like something both precious and dangerous at the same time. As he read the opening lines aloud, my breath caught hard in my chest. "I, Daniel Rhodes, leave the full authority of my estate to my daughter Elena Rhodes. Everything. The house, the savings accounts, his business shares in the company he'd helped build from nothing. All of it. Every single thing." My hands started shaking uncontrollably. But then Alan's voice changed, dropping lower. "However, there is a contingency clause attached." My stomach dropped like a stone falling into dark water. Contingency. That word felt heavy, important, dangerous in ways I couldn't fully understand yet. Alan continued reading carefully. His voice measured. "You only become the sole inheritor if a certain condition is met. A condition tied directly to your father's suspicions about your Aunt Miranda." I blinked hard, trying to process his words. Suspicion. My father suspected Miranda of something serious. Alan turned to face me directly, his expression grave and serious. "Elena, your father believed your aunt was stealing from him. Small amounts over time. Carefully hidden to avoid detection." The room tilted slightly. I gripped the armrest of my chair to steady myself. "And if that suspicion proved true," Alan said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper, "then the will changes dramatically. The entire inheritance structure shifts in your favor." He paused deliberately, letting that information sink in. "But if it's false, if there's no evidence of wrongdoing, the estate is divided among the family exactly as your aunt claimed." My mind raced with possibilities. My father had set a trap. Careful, deliberate test. And Miranda had absolutely no idea what was coming for her. That afternoon, I searched my father's house again, this time more carefully and methodically than before. If my aunt had been stealing money from him, there had to be proof somewhere in this house. My father recorded everything. Every bill, every receipt, every single transaction. He kept detailed records going back years and years. Except one crucial thing was missing. The ledger. The thick black notebook he used religiously every year for taxes, where he tracked every penny that came in or went out of his accounts. It was gone. Completely gone from its usual spot on the bookshelf beside his desk. But I remembered clearly the indentation in the safe. The outline had been exactly the shape and size of a notebook-sized folder. The ledger was in the safe originally. And now it wasn't there. Only one group of people had access to this house before me after his death. My aunt, my cousin, my step-uncle. They hadn't just hidden the will from me to keep me in the dark. They had stolen the evidence needed to prove what my father suspected all along. The evidence that would completely invalidate their entire claim to his estate. And they didn't know something absolutely crucial. The will's true power hadn't even activated yet. My father had planned this perfectly. Every step, every detail, every possible outcome. He knew exactly what would happen after he died. He knew them. And he'd prepared for everything. I sat in his office chair, surrounded by empty shelves and missing papers, and I smiled genuinely for the first time since the funeral. They thought they'd won this battle. They had no idea what was coming. Alan called me late that night. His voice urgent and serious on the phone. Elena, there's something else you need to know immediately. Your father opened a secondary account 6 months before his death. He sent me the file electronically through secure email. I opened it on my laptop, my hands shaking slightly with anticipation. The file showed regular withdrawals over several months consistently. Small amounts, perfectly consistent, transferred to an external account I didn't recognize. But the name listed under authorized access made my blood freeze completely solid. Miranda's Rowan, my aunt's full legal name. She'd been draining him quietly, carefully, like a parasite. Small enough amounts not to trigger any bank alerts or raise suspicion. Large enough to accumulate into thousands of dollars over time. My father had been sick toward the end, confused sometimes, easy to manipulate when he was vulnerable. And she'd used that weakness against him without mercy. If this account tied directly to the contingency clause in the will, then the entire inheritance might shift instantly and completely in my favor. But what exactly was the condition? What had my father written in that final section? Alan's voice came through the phone again, pulling me from my thoughts. We need to read the final clause together, but not until the entire family is present. Legally, they must all hear it at the same time. My heart pounded hard against my ribs. This was going to explode in their faces spectacularly. Everything they'd planned, every lie they'd told, every document they'd stolen, it was all about to collapse around them. And I couldn't wait to watch it happen. At 9 o'clock sharp the next morning, Miranda arrived at my door without calling first or giving any warning. No greeting. No pretense of sympathy or concern. Just pure entitlement radiating from her like heat. Give us the house keys, she demanded, standing on the front porch with her hand extended expectantly. The family voted last night. Tyler will be moving in this weekend while we finalize the estate paperwork. I stared at her, not moving from the doorway or inviting her inside. The will decides who gets the house, I said softly, keeping my voice steady and controlled. Not you. Not the family. The will. She stepped closer, invading my personal space deliberately. Her voice dropping to something low and venomous. If you push this, Elena, you'll regret it deeply. You were never close to your father anyway. We were the ones who cared for him when he was sick and dying. We were there. Lie. All of it was lies. I'd visited every single week. I'd cooked meals. I'd read to him when his eyes got too tired to focus. But she'd rewritten history in her mind to justify what she was doing. He trusted me, I answered quietly. Enough to leave something very specific behind for me. Her face cracked slightly, the confident mask slipping badly. How much do you know? She asked, fear creeping into her voice. Enough to destroy you. She left without another word, practically running to her car in the driveway. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped her keys twice on the pavement. She knew the walls were closing in. She just didn't know how fast. The lawyer's conference room was too small for the tension it held that afternoon. Miranda sat on one side of the long polished table, Tyler beside her, Ross at the end looking uncomfortable. I sat alone on the other side. Alan placed the will on the desk in front of everyone, the papers crisp and official looking. "This reading includes the contingency clause your father wrote," he announced to the room. Miranda scoffed loudly, folding her arms across her chest defensively. "There is no contingency. Daniel told me himself that everything would be divided equally among." Alan raised his hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Please stop lying. For your own sake, stop lying right now." Her jaw locked shut. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Then Alan turned the page slowly, deliberately. Daniel wrote that if any family member withdrew funds without proper authorization, forged signatures on documents, or accessed accounts without his explicit knowledge. Miranda stiffened in her chair. Her face went pale. Then that person would be permanently barred from inheriting anything from his estate. Tyler swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. "And any relative acting with them or assisting them," Alan added, looking directly at Ross and Tyler, "would also be removed from the will entirely." Ross blanched, his hands gripping the table edge. Then Alan said the words that changed everything. "We have documentation of unauthorized access. Evidence your father prepared himself before he died. Bank records, video timestamps, everything." Silence swept the room like a wave. And then Alan's voice dropped lower. "Which brings us to the last page of the will." Alan rotated the document slowly so everyone at the table could see it clearly. Miranda leaned forward like a puppet pulled by invisible strings, her eyes scanning the words frantically. The final clause was printed in bold text at the bottom of the page. "If fraud is discovered by any party before the will is fully executed, the rightful heir will be Elena Rhodes alone. All other claims are immediately void." Miranda stumbled back in her chair like she'd been physically struck. "No. He wouldn't. He would never do this to me." "He did," Alan said calmly. "He suspected you for months. He documented everything." Her voice cracked with desperation. "I took care of him. I was there when he was sick." Alan didn't flinch. "You took advantage of him. There's a difference." Tyler slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. "This is unbelievable. This can't be legal." Ross just muttered under his breath. "We're ruined. We're completely ruined." But Alan wasn't finished. He pulled out another folder from his briefcase. "There is one more instruction your father left. One final message." I felt the room tilt slightly. Another instruction. My father had planned even deeper than any of us realized. He'd thought of everything. Every possible move they might make. Every lie they might tell. And he'd prepared for all of it. Alan looked at me with something like sympathy in his eyes. "Elena, your father recorded a video message 2 months before he passed. Legally, it must be played now." Alan opened his laptop and turned it toward the center of the table so everyone could see the screen clearly. He pressed play. The video flickered for a moment. Then my father appeared on screen. He looked older than I remembered, more tired, but his eyes were clear and sharp and focused. He knew exactly what he was doing when he recorded this message. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice steady and calm, "it means I was right about everything." Miranda gasped audibly, her hand covering her mouth. My father continued speaking directly to the camera. "Miranda, I trusted you. I welcomed you into my life, into my home, into my private affairs. And you used my illness against me. You drained my accounts slowly, thinking I wouldn't notice. You lied to my daughter. You tried to take what isn't yours." She was shaking now, tears streaming down her face. "For that reason," he said, leaning slightly forward, "I changed everything. Every document, every account, every legal paper. I made sure the truth would come out." He paused, and his expression softened. "Elena, if you are sitting there watching this, I need you to know something. Saw you. I valued you. Even when you thought I didn't notice your visits, your care, your love. I saw all of it. My eyes blurred with tears. And to the rest of you. He leaned even closer to the camera, his voice hardening. Your behavior after my death will confirm everything I already knew about who you really are. The video ended. The screen went black. No one spoke for a long, terrible moment. The silence was suffocating. Alan closed the laptop with a soft click that echoed in the quiet room. Based on the evidence presented and the conditions outlined in the will, he said formally, only Elena Rhodes qualifies as the legal heir. All other parties are removed. Miranda whispered hoarsely. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything, I answered quietly, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotion. That is, he planned this. Every word. Every detail. Every outcome. Tyler looked at me with a mixture of resentment, panic, and fear all swirling together in his eyes. Ross grabbed his coat from the back of his chair in silence and stood up without looking at anyone. Miranda reached across the table toward me desperately, her hand trembling violently. Elena, please. We're family. We can work this out somehow. I stepped back from the table, away from her reaching hand. Family doesn't steal from you when you're dying. Family doesn't lie about the dead to take what isn't theirs. Her face crumbled completely. And that was the exact moment I realized something important. My revenge wasn't about vengeance or cruelty. It was simply allowing the truth to speak when they couldn't hide it anymore. The estate transferred to me completely 1 week later. The house with all its memories. The business shares. The savings accounts. Everything my father built. My father had protected me in the only way he could from beyond the grave. By making sure his final words ended the lies they tried so desperately to rewrite. And when the last legal document was signed and notarized, I stood alone in his office, surrounded by his books and his smell and his memory. I whispered to the quiet room. I heard you, Dad. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for protecting me. Thank you for everything.